Welcome to the Upstate Interview Series. I'm Luke Perry. Today, my guest is Leslie Corbo, Associate Professor and Director of Cybersecurity at Utica College. Welcome, Leslie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Today, we're going to discuss the impact of the pandemic on cybersecurity. The pandemic, of course, has influenced a lot of different aspects of social behavior, and cybersecurity is no different. This is a great opportunity to walk through several dimensions and related considerations. First, we'll start with the transition to remote work. Myself included has been working a lot at home lately. Many businesses and organizations have moved in this direction for health reasons. Leslie, how prepared do you think businesses were for this transition, particularly in regards to cybersecurity?
They weren't prepared at all. Schools weren't prepared, especially small businesses were not prepared. Some of the larger businesses that already had people working remotely part of the time, but I think when everybody in the family had to be home, you've got kids who are trying to learn remotely. You've got parents who are, competing for bandwidth and things like that. It just didn't work out the way that they planned. The other problem is, our work networks are more secure. We spend a lot of time, we have dedicated people to securing them. We don't have that at home. We just connect and hope for the best. So I think that was a really big problem. We had a lot of people who were complaining about, their systems being infected and that kind of thing. And you couldn't take your system, even if it belonged to the workplace, back to have somebody fix it or repair it. So we were caught with a lot of problems, and we didn't really do a lot to try to plan for anything like this happening. So I think this is going to be something that for the rest of history, we'll be including something like this in our business continuity and disaster recovery plans.
That makes a lot of sense. And would you say many businesses are caught up to speed now, or is it still a work in progress in terms of cybersecurity?
They're getting better. Things have gotten better, but it's not perfect. And it's not going to be, because you've got to wait until this is all over, and then what you can do is kind of sit back and reflect and start your planning again. And I'm sure that that's what they're waiting for, but it's been a little bit of a challenge, to say the least.
Of course. And another challenging environment that's also multifaceted is education, particularly K through 12. Now, these are not exclusively, but largely government domains, and schools have had to transition to remote instruction, remote work. How has that gone from a cybersecurity perspective?
Well, one of the big things is training, and I think that a lot of schools didn't have training for their professors, for their teachers, for the students and the parents. It just seemed to be such a scramble. And when students would be issued, let's say they were issued a Chromebook or something like that, with that kind of thing, you've got to remember to bring the cord. You've got to remember that you need to plug it in. You have to remember that you have to charge it. There was nothing really, no manuals or anything like that were created to help these people figure out what to do. And we have to remember that not everyone is as tech savvy as we are in information security, cyber, IT. We have to remember that people need directions. And I think that that was something that we became ever so mindful of while this whole, while the pandemic started to unfold and people had to be working from home.
And I think many school districts in New York last spring, it was kind of crisis mode because of the state's response and people needing to have to stay at home. And then heading into last fall and the beginning of the new academic year, it seems like there was some opportunity, albeit very difficult, to make some of these changes. So do you feel like districts have been able to improve upon that initial response to the pandemic when it comes to what they've been doing remotely in cybersecurity?
They absolutely did. But one of the things that we always have to keep in mind is there's so many rural areas as well, Luke. There's rural areas, there's areas that don't have access. They have no Wi-Fi. They're struggling, and that's going to be the part. How do we catch that up? So that becomes an infrastructure problem. How do we make it to where Wi-Fi is available to everyone?
And infrastructure is certainly a focus now at the federal level in terms of the bill that's being considered. And another major issue at the federal level that also cuts close to home is unemployment, obviously with the job losses related to the pandemic. And one thing I know you've been looking closely at are unemployment scams that's made the local news here in the Utica area. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so unemployment scams became a really big thing when people were losing their jobs. The scammers, the cyber criminals went out in full force. They were sending emails offering to help, offering to find, we know where there's free money for you if you've lost your job. Those kinds of scams that people were searching for. The other thing is it started hitting inboxes. So when it hits your inbox, you're entering all of this information. There's all kinds of information that you're giving them, your social security number, your date of birth, your name, address. All of that kind of stuff can be bought and sold. It can be purchased on the dark web. It can be traded. But there's also criminal elements who will open up credit in your name and then go and, withdraw it from different areas and that kind of thing. There's one group in particular that I've been following, the Scattered Canary. They are a cyber criminal group out of Nigeria, and they've been really successful at getting people's money.
Can you help us understand a little bit how the government or private industries go about setting up defenses and trying to stop these types of things?
Well, here again is another place where they were caught with no plan in place. And what happened was everybody was, a news story comes out that, somebody hasn't been able to get through. In the beginning of all of this, even in New York State, somebody is being told, okay, you have to fax that to us. And it's very difficult to find a fax machine, right? So all of the documentation and things like that people need to give to the agency so that they can collect their benefits is really, it was a very outdated method. But the other problem is when you start communicating online, you don't know if you're communicating with the actual unemployment insurance. So it just became a real problem. And people were trying to send documents. They were sending them to cyber criminals. They were being intercepted, and then they were waiting for their money. Everybody tried to do it very quickly, so the guard went down. The safeguards that we put in place to make sure that fraud doesn't happen, they had to go down so that people could get their money. And we ended up with a really big mess. And it wasn't just in New York, it was all over the country.
Now that the employment situation, at least locally, seems to have improved somewhat, and we hear about businesses wanting to hire and trying to hire as quickly as possible, the other side of this coin are employment scams. So what's going on with those?
So now what's happening is we've got people who are sending out emails. They're using social media sites like Facebook and Twitter, and the job ads are too good to be true. I think last week in Oswego County, right near here, they had a job at the airport that was listed for anywhere from $800 to $1,200 a week. People were trying to be helpful, passing this message along to those who've lost jobs. There's still a lot of people working on pay cuts. Don't forget, larger organizations are still working on they had to cut pay. So we we've got a lot of jobs out there that aren't real jobs. They're scams. They make it look like it's a great job, it pays well, but it's collecting a lot of information. When you apply for a job, you never need to give them your date of birth or your social security number. You just don't. And those are the kinds of things that they're collecting on now.
That's good advice. So from a practical perspective, you're saying try to use as much common sense as possible. If it seems too good to be true, it probably is. And keep in mind that your important personal information is not something that you'll be asked. So don't share it. And that's a red flag if you see something like that.
Never share your social security number. No job application will ever need that. You fill that out after you've got the job.
Right, that's the fun part, right? Well, these are newer developments in terms of the pandemic and cybersecurity, but there are some long-standing practices in terms of scams, such as phishing emails and these types of things that change over time and adapt as well. I know this is something you've looked closely at in your research. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I can. So recently, there's been a lot of surveys that say that they're from Pfizer. If you fill out this survey and tell us how satisfied you were, you can win a prize and that kind of thing. You start clicking through it, answering questions, and then they're asking you for your social security number and your date of birth. Those emails. I know there's been a lot of public service announcements about those lately, but those emails are not real. Don't click on them. Don't answer any questions. Just delete them from your inbox. And somehow they're getting through email filters, which that's something that I'm looking into with my own research, because it's curious to me how they're even getting through. But there's a lot of nobody from Pfizer or Johnson & Johnson or Moderna are going to ask you, how do you feel about the vaccine? What side effects did you have? And send you a prize. Those aren't real. The other thing that's been popping up a lot lately are either phone calls or emails from Amazon, but it's not Amazon. It's cyber criminals who are saying, look, it looks like somebody tried to charge $1,400 or $1,000 on your Amazon card. But we think this is suspicious, so give us a call back. And when you give them a call back, they verify your identity. But by verifying your identity, they're getting your social security number, your Amazon credit card number, the 3-digit code, the expiration date, your date of birth. They don't need all of that information. So that's another thing that's popping up.
Yes, and it's all very challenging. As we know, many people interact with Amazon all the time, and we get all types of phone calls and emails in the process of our daily lives. So one of the important things to keep in mind, based on what you're saying, is be very sensitive about the information you share. And it also seems to me that the source of these inquiries would be worthwhile. Is that something that is difficult for people to sort out if they think they're getting an email from a pharmaceutical company or a phone call from Amazon? Are these people who are posing to be representatives of that, or are they leave it kind of murky? How would you advise sorting through that and kind of keeping an eye out for it?
Yeah, so these people will pose to be Amazon employees, and they want to verify your identity. So what I always recommend to people is get your card, flip it over. There's an 800 number on the back of your credit card. Call that number, because if there's any suspicious activity, that number will be able to help you. And that's the real deal. That's the real number. Use the number on your credit card, not the number that a bank, because it could be your bank, but that a bank or credit card leave you. Don't use that number. Use the number on your card, because that will keep you, that's the safest way to react to any of those calls. 99 times out of 100, they're going to tell you, yeah, that wasn't us.
That's good advice. And last question, having looked at all these different dimensions and considerations of cybersecurity related to the pandemic, is there anything that stands out that surprises you or is much of this sort of new variants on past practices given vulnerable context? How do you make sense of all this?
I'd like to say that I'm surprised by some of this, but I'm not. What I am surprised about is the way that a victim will react. Nobody is ever going to ask you to send them money using a gift card if they're a legitimate organization. So that's one of the things I think that still surprises me, is that people will still go and purchase gift cards to pay a debt, to pay the IRS, to pay a cyber criminal, to return money, unemployment scams. They next have somebody call and say, yeah, we deposited that money in your account, you have to pay us back. Go purchase gift cards to pay us back. Nothing like that will ever, that's never real. So the gift card purchases, I think, is the thing that surprises me the most, because to me, logically, even if I knew nothing about this, it still wouldn't make sense to me.
Thank you. And that's another, just one of many great reasons to learn more about cybersecurity. Thank you so much, Professor Leslie Corbo, for your time today. Much appreciated.
Thank you. It was great being here.
And thank you all for watching. For more, go to ucpublicaffairs.com.